Greetings ladies and gents, and welcome to this match video for Mud's mission taken from the website Royal Road. As always, I hope that you all enjoy this episode, and if you do, please consider supporting the channel. Also, all of these episodes will be available as a podcast on the various different podcast platforms. All the links will be down below. Chapter 21, Mansion Mastery. A giant of a man with long brown hair, a thick moustache, and a tanned skin entered a familiar meeting room. Despite wearing casual clothing, the bulging muscles and unusually sharp movements gave the man an intimidating aura. Within the meeting room already sat 4 individuals, Mal's forest hunting party. After the 2 men of the party rose to pay their respects, followed shortly by the relaxed priestess and a young mage who seemed momentarily starstruck. Association Master Thagi Ghoul motioned for them to be seated. "Thank you all for taking time to be interviewed. I apologize for the delay," said the massive man as he sat in his comfortable chair at the head of the table. "We are happy to be of service to the association, sir," replied the serious party leader as he took his own seat, making sure to wait until after Ghoul himself had sat down. I've already gotten the report, but I'd like to hear it in your own words when you saw last night." "Of course, sir." Mal's eyes moved towards the ceiling as he scratched his beard in thought. "We first encountered it yesterday morning, about an hour northeast of the city." After the sweaty human left, Mud ordered the demon to protect the household as it headed out for more hunting, traveling as usual through the treetops. The golem headed east towards the foothills. While slimes had been a useful form of experience, their population was not large. Due to their solitary nature, large amounts of time had to be wasted searching for targets during the hunt. By contrast, goblins appeared to travel in groups and, according to the almanac, were known for the high reproductive rates. With any luck, a buffet of experience awaited Mud in the foothills. Climbing skill has increased to level 4. A short time later, Mud arrived in the foothills while the terrain was noticeably rockier. Trees still grew thick and provided ample perches for the golem's unusual form to travel. With recent changes in technique, Mud was now able to travel through the treetops much faster than he could crawl, moving at the speed of a running human. Swinging through the trees, it wasn't long before Mud spotted a small band of diminutive green humanoids crouching over a dead red deer. Positioning itself over the feasting magical beasts, Mud prepared its attack. Focusing its will, Mud quickly bent its mind mana and the intent of controlling momentum, forming a force bolt. Taking aim at the leftmost goblin's head, Mud carefully flexed 15 mana into the spell. At this level, the spell was still completely invisible to the golem's vision. After reaching the correct amount, Mud unleashed the spell. As the bolt flew rigidly through the air, Mud immediately began forming the second force bolt. The 3 living goblins leapt back from the deer corpse in shock as the head of the target goblin exploded into gore. By the time they pulled out their weapons and began looking wildly around the area for the source of the attack, a second goblin's head exploded. Filled with terror and an inexplicable assault, the 2 remaining goblins turned to flee. While one managed to escape the clearing, the other wasn't so lucky. A sharp metal blade penetrated the head of the magical beast, followed by the weight of a falling mud golem, killing it before it hit the ground. Experience gained 24. Experience gained 25. Experience gained 24. Mud golem species increased to level 4. Skill points increased to 1. Putting the dagger it had taken from bark back into its body, Mud climbed to a nearby tree and checked his status. Name, Mud Golem, Level 4 Mud Golem, Class, None. HP 7 out of 8, SP 0 out of 0, MP 110 out of 160. Spells, Psionics, Force Bolt, Lesser Telekinesis, and Paracosia. Skills 1. Climbing 4, Housework Max, Mathematics 3, Psionics 2, Sneak Attack 3, Stealth 4, Unarmed Combat 4, Amorphous Form Rare, Almanac Unique. Status Effect Incomplete Articulate Ruins. At this point, Mud felt good understanding of what expected from gaining a level. 1 more HP, 20 more MP, and a skill point. So far, that had been a consistent feature. Incidentally, the statistic page had not changed at all since it was first checked. As for experience values required to level, so far it appeared to stay consistent at approximately 100. Checking the skills list, there was only one new addition. Enhanced skill, housework. Reach level maximum in skill housework. The enhanced version of Mud's favorite skill. This was an incredibly tempting option. Time and time again the housework skill had provided useful insight and clever techniques for removing stains, efficiently organizing, and even landscaping. The only thing preventing Mud from purchasing the skill immediately was the dubious usefulness that it would have towards following the Master's orders. Would the skill really help not kill humans, follow the orders of humans, avoid damage, and protect the Master's estate? On the surface, probably not. However, Mud was not willing to let its desire to perfect the art of cleaning to be defeated so easily. By thinking creatively, perhaps there was such a skill that could be used for. Hypothetically, what if a human ordered me to clean something perfectly? Or what if it was threatened by a fire dragon to kill me unless I polished its entire hoard in an hour? Or what if the enhanced version of the skill was actually really useful for combat? Convincing itself with such incredibly unlikely hypothetical scenarios, Mud finally purchased the enhancement. Housework skill mutated into Household Mastery skill at level 1. Skill, Household Mastery. Holder of the skill has a special mastery of their own home, in addition to extensive knowledge and maintenance required to keep the home in perfect condition. They also gain a limited domain over their own home. In that moment, a new kind of sense appeared in Mud's mind. Although it was vague, a general sense of the condition of the Master's estate was discernible. In particular, it could feel the presence of 1 strong and 2 weak and countless extremely faint life forms. Likely, those indicated Jabraks, the captive humans, and various household pests. Additionally, Mud became aware of countless tiny details that had missed in cleaning of the mansion, which had naively thought was perfect. A multitude of tiny imperfections clawed at the edges of the golem's mind. A bit of dust here, a pool of human blood there, some crumbs under the oven. All of this would need to be dealt with when one got back. For now, Mud would continue hunting golems. Now wearing his heavy and expertly crafted gold-trimmed black iron armor, Thagi Ghoul walked out of the northeast with the city Galtheus. In front of him, leading the way, was the swordsman Meld, along with the boxer Kim and the priestess Ovis. Walking closely beside Ghoul was the black-haired mage, Susie. Staring at the massive man, Susie spoke to him while holding her long spear close to her chest. "It's such an honor to be working with you, Mr. Ghoul. I've read so much about your adventures. Oh, is it true that you once defeated an entire army of orcs by yourself?" "Leave him alone. You can see that it's bothering him, Susie," called back the disgruntled Meld. The girl began to say something, but after looking up towards the association leader and deciding the better of it, she held her tongue and merely pouted. Amused by the girl's antics, Thagi decided to humor her. "Oh, it's no trouble at all. I'll tell you the story as we travel." Despite herself, the raven, wielder of entropy, let out a little squeal. End of chapter. Chapter 22, Mustachioed Monster. How many elements of mana are there? This is, I believe, a question with 3 answers. Hypothetically, infinite, technically finite but extremely large, and practically little more than we know now. Nearly any concept, if realized with enough specificity, can be used to taint mana. In other words, mankind can create as many forms of mana as thoughts can be conceived. Unfortunately, most elements turn out to be practically useless. For example, if one were to conceptualize the ideal of a chair, the tainted chair element mana results would be good for little more than sitting on. There are some conceptual convergences that reduce the useful total as well. Both fire and friction, when taken to their ideal, create the same ideal of heat. Going back to the number of technically possible forms, one might wonder why I say finite. After all, are not the possible thoughts of mankind infinite? I would argue that they are not. There are certain thoughts that a human would never be able to conceive of, even given infinite time. In order that one might know something, we must have another related concept with which to derive meaning. If a man blind from birth wishes to understand color, they might gain an understanding by relating the concept of sound or feel. A word for green in isolation has no meaning. A bridge must be made with what is already known. Once mankind has made every possible combination between every possible bit of information available to it, there will be nothing left to think. Likewise, there are surely things in the universe that are true, but which mankind shall never know of, for we have not sense to perceive them, and no relevant connections to bridge the gap. An excerpt from the musings of the philosopher Magus Descartes. "This is where you first encountered it?" asked the massive armored man who was sniffing loudly at the air. Val looked around the field where he had fought the pack of wolves the day before. "That's right, it was spying on us from up in the trees over there." The swordsman took his hand off his beard and pointed towards a particular treetop. After walking to the base of the tree, the huge man in thick metal armor effortlessly leapt up from a standing posture into the high branch. Sniffing the tree each time, Thugi jumped between his several branches with no apparent effort. On the 7th branch, the giant spent as much longer time huffing, nearly crushing his face against the bark. Afterwards, the huge man jumped from the branch to land deeper into the woods, disappearing from sight. Moments later, he jumped back down to the forest floor beside the party, landing with a silent roll and springing back to his feet in one motion. "It is as I suspected. I can smell residual mind matter on the tree." Ghoul turned towards the party. "Take me to the location of the second incident." Mud observed the goblins in front of it. The 3 magical beasts walked side by side, scanning the surroundings with weapons drawn. Their level of alertness was much higher than the last group. Perhaps the goblin that had fled with the last fight had raised the alarm. Such unskilled vigilance would be of little use against Mud, however. Taking aim, Mud fired a force bolt at the lead goblin's head. Bang! Gore flew backwards onto the stunned allies before they could recover. Mud dropped down from the top leftmost goblin, sliding the dagger deep into its brain, and fired a point-blank force bolt into the right goblin's torso. Dunk! Bang! Less than 3 seconds later, the ambush began. It was over. Sneak attack level increased to level 4. Experience gained 21. Experience gained 21. Experience gained 20. Again, the worrying dip in experience. No use worrying about it now. They were still worth the effort to kill, for the time being. Making good time through the forest as the monsters seemed to actively avoid them, they arrived at the location of the party's second encounter with Mud. Not needing to ask where the incident had occurred, the association leader walked over to the crater left by the mysterious stalker's spell. Kneeling down next to the small pit, Ghoul scooped up a small handful of dirt and licked it. "Gross!" muttered the wincing Susie. The armored giant squinted and let the dirt fall from his hand. "More mind mana. We're dealing with a psionics user." Standing up and dusting himself off, Ghoul leapt into the nearby treetops. Hopping from branch to branch for a moment, he landed on the back of the ground with a roll. Crossing his arms and looking in a certain direction, he spoke slowly. "I see. I believe I know where its base of operations is." Looking up at the canopy, he continued, "These branches have deep scratches as it passed. It doesn't look like it even tried to cover its trail. If I consider where the marks from here and from the first location would intersect. This way." Without explaining further, he began walking into the woods. In a short time, Mud hunted 2 additional groups of goblins for a total of 7 kills, and gained another level. For now, the golem decided to save a skill point. If it continued to become more difficult to gain experience as Mud's level increased, skill points might become an incredibly valuable and scarce resource in future. Rather than wildly purchasing new skills, the best path forward was the long run seemed to be enhancing existing skills, improving strengths rather than simply becoming a mediocre at many things. Just as the golem moved into position from another ambush, Mud felt a sensation from the domain. 3 moderately strong signals entered the yard. They were much stronger than the thin human and the thick human, roughly as strong as the feeding of Jabrax. Mud was slightly concerned, and turned from his quarry back towards the mansion. Before it could move, however, it was assaulted by 2 more signals. One was around the same level, but the other. If the captured humans were pinpoints of light, then Jibrax was a candle in the darkness. This new arrival was a roaring inferno. There was no hope against such a monster. If a thing wanted to, there was no question in Mud's mind that it could obliterate the entire estate in a heartbeat. Filled with panic, Mud began swinging towards her home as fast as its blazing mud tentacles could carry it. Scowling in annoyance at being interrupted from her fun yet again, Jibrax opened the door. Yes, what is it this time? The group of 5 humans, led by a truly massive armored brute with somewhat charming fluffy moustache, stood outside the side of the door. The mustachioed man spoke to the group. Hello there, I'm Kage Ghoul, leader of the local branch of the Delvers Association. May we come in for a moment? There's something I'd like to discuss with you. The demon gulped. An association leader was not something that she wanted to deal with. Any clever tricks would probably just get her killed, if she was lucky. Quickly putting back on her persona of an innocent and shy teenage girl, she lowered her head and spoke softly. It's not like I don't believe you or anything, but you have proof? Ghoul leaned back and let out a mighty laugh. It's been a long time since I've been asked to show my credentials. I guess I'm too used to everybody knowing me by sight or reputation. Well, this should do as proof, huh? Fishing a small, glistening piece of flat silver metal from his pouch in his belt, he held it up for her to inspect. Kage Ghoul, Delvers Association leader, City of Galtheus. An association card was a solid proof of identity, despite the simplicity. The association frequently performed wide-area scrying for fake cards. Those found with such things were punished swiftly and brutally. There was no doubt that this man really was the leader. Smiling weakly, Jibrax stepped back from the door and stretched back arm towards the interior. Would you like to come in for some tea? End of chapter. Chapter 23. Misdirection. With stiff movements, Kage bent down so his head would fit under the doorway. Once past the threshold, he began making rapid, deep-sniffing noises. To Jibrax, he almost resembled a huge armor-plated bloodhound. Several seconds later, he finally stopped and turned towards the demon with the best business smile. I was rather expecting to be greeted by Sithla when I knocked on the door. Who are you, young lady? While he was obviously trying to appear non-threatening, his bulging neck muscles and heavily black armor made the efforts largely moot. Jibrax shriveled back slightly, as would be appropriate for a normal teenage girl in such a situation. Making sure to put his right amount of fear in her voice, she composed herself. My name's Jibrax. I'm Sithla's niece. He's having me meet anybody he visits because he's feeling a bit antisocial lately. The demon flinched back in illegitimate surprise as the bull of a man burst again into a loud laughter. Lately, she says. Meld, have you ever heard of old Sithla not being antisocial? I'm afraid not, sir. Immediately replied the older gentleman in leather armor. The armor was well worn and marred with deep scratches, but the spotless polished surface made clear that it was lovingly maintained. Noticing her glance, he turned towards her after following Ghoul through the door. Nice to meet you, Jibrax. I'm Meld. With him came a shirtless, athletic man who appeared to be in his 20s, judging from his large, knobbly knuckles and lack of weapon. In contrast to the group, Jibrax suspected him to be an unarmed fighter. Kim, he introduced himself, and with a deep nod. Followed behind came a demi-human with a gaudy technicolor robe. I hate priests, thought the demon. Looks like a venerable Gnostic's robe, too. They're the worst. What a lovely home you have, declared the sheep-horned priestess. Oh, she's Ovis, introduced Meld. Finally, the pale-skinned, black-robed girl near the demon's apparent age walked in, hefting a long spear on her shoulder. The girl smiled brightly at Jibrax and waved. Hi, you can call me the Raven, wielder of entropy, or just the Raven for short. Your hair is such a pretty color. Do you know magic, too? Taken aback by the contrast between her introduction and chipper personality, Jibrax stammered slightly. What? Helpfully intervening yet again, Meld spoke up. Susie, this isn't the time to make friends. We're on business. A statement which was met by pouting the Raven. And what business is that exactly? Asked Jibrax as she led the group towards the kitchen. The association leader followed closely behind, occasionally taking a sniff at the air. There have been sightings of an unknown named monster in the nearby woods. Arriving at the kitchen, Jibrax waved an arm towards the wooden dining table in the kitchen, surrounded by 6 simple seats. Once the guests were settled, she filled the kettle with a water-summoned artifact, then placed it on a heating plate. "Yes, I heard about that. Early today, the mayor stopped by. A Mr. Fellow, he warned me about it." Sitting in the chair that was almost comically too small for him, Thagi twirled his moustache absent-mindedly between 2 quantitative fingers. "I see. How much did he tell you?" "Not much, only that you have named monster nearby woods. Why are you here anyway?" "I don't know anything about the named monster." Not knowing the extent of the leader's talents, the demon made sure that she was facing away from him, placing the kettle on the stove when she spoke those words. It was possible someone like him could read meaning behind the subtlest expression. Crossing his arms and leaning back, he hummed slightly. Meld, Kim, and Over sat calmly in their chairs, while the Raven sat slumped with her chin on her hands, clearly bored. "All right, I'll tell you what we know. Maybe it'll ring a bell with you. I believe the monster is operating out of this area around this house. It's impossible to be sure he's been inside here since the smell is being masked by all of those." Thagi gestured vaguely towards the rest of the house. "Beast parts Sithla loves to collect. We also know it uses mind mana, and has a rather lot of it too." It blew a deep crater with what appeared to be a bolt. Jibrax remained facing away from the leader, minding the kettle. Are you sure it was a monster? Did it get a good look at it?" Thagi squinted at the back of the teenager, but it was Meld who answered. "No, we can't be sure. I only saw it once from my peripheral, and the second time was almost completely obscured by foliage. All we know for sure is that it's about the size of a child, and its body moves in a very strange way." Face hidden from her guests, the demon made a wide, toothy smile. "I can work with this. I know who the monster is." The shocked silence was broken momentarily by the whistling of the kettle. Pouring out 6 servings of tea, Jibrax schooled her face and began carrying them over to the table. Ovis lifted her arm high into the air and stood up. "I'll help." Quickly, all the cups were in front of their owners, and Jibrax took a seat opposite the association leader. After taking a sip of the tea, Ghoul cleared his throat. "So, you say that you know who the monster is. Who is it then?" Swallowing her own sip of tea, the demon set down her cup and smiled at the massive man. "He's my younger brother." "Huh?" came the simultaneously confused voices of Thagi and the Raven. The association leader shook his head slightly to regain his composure. What exactly do you mean by that? Your brother is a monster." The demon giggled lightly. "Oh no, he's a normal human, but you see, he's a bit of an oddball." Jibrax quickly thought over the details she had to explain away and decided on an angle. "He was born mute, you see, unable to talk. So, when we came to stay, Uncle Sithla trained him to yup so that he could use psionics to talk to people." Undaunted by the skeptical look from Meld, she pressed on. "He only got the skill recently, but it seems our family has a naturally high mana pool. He told me last night that he spooked a hunting party when he accidentally overcharged a spell when trying to help them." Jibrax looked towards each of the others in the table. "I apologize if my foolish brother caused you any trouble. He was really upset about it." Everyone fell silent for a moment after that bombshell. The first one to speak was the chipper Ovis. "It's fine. Nobody was seriously hurt. We forgive him." "Wait." Meld held up his hand. "That doesn't explain the inhuman movements. The thing I saw didn't move like a child." The corner of Jibrax's mouth curled up. "Almost got them. One more push." "Oh. About that, recently Little Mud has taken to wearing a flowing robe with lots of hanging bits and swings around it with telekinesis. He thinks it makes him look cool." Meld held up nothing to say to that. "This time it was Raven who spoke up. His name is, Mud." The demon shrugged. "Blame our parents. Jibrax is a weird name too, I know." After rubbing his moustache once again and taking a long, hard look at Jibrax, Agi Ghoul let out a heavy breath and put his hand down on the table. "I suppose that is a suitable explanation for everything that has happened so far. I want to meet this brother of yours, though. He needs to get a lecture on the proper use of magic around strangers." "And hunting etiquette," added Meld. The demon smiled at her successful bluff, but before she could reply, her face froze. From the connection in her soul, she could feel the contractor was very close, and approaching rapidly. Mud was returning home. End of chapter. Chapter 24. Misgivings. Imagine that you own a factory making paperclips. In order to increase productivity, you fund the creation of a golem from an enchanter. When the golem first awakens, it asks you, "What is my purpose?" You respond, "To make paperclips." When it asks you how many, you respond, "Make as many as possible. Only take actions which will maximize the number of paperclips made." The golem then sets to work. This order set may not at first glance appear to be a problem. This sort of order would be perfectly reasonable to give a sapient, but how would a strange mind of a construct try and carry out these orders? What you want is for the golem to use its available supplies to create paperclips, but the golem knows there is a faster way. If it simply created more factories, it could make paperclips much faster than it could alone. So, instead of working in the factory, the golem goes off to make as many factories as possible. But it can do better still. It can create more golems to create more factories, or form a nation to gain the funds to construct more factories, etc. The golem eventually moves on to kill all life and turn the entire planet into factories. Thus, the end of the world comes because someone wanted more paperclips. But wait, you might be thinking, why did the golem want to kill people? The reason is simple. The sapiens would obviously try and prevent it from turning the entire planet into a paperclip factory. In particular, it would want to kill its own master as quickly as possible, to prevent getting new orders that would distract it, or even worse, being told to stop. You may not believe the lone golem could be capable of enacting a plot to wipe out all life. That may be true, but it is not the point of this thought experiment. The fact that such a simple, harmless-sounding order could create an immortal, tireless intelligence that desires the end of all life may cause a great concern. Even more concerning is that the problem is not isolated to just production-related orders. Killing all sapiens is beneficial for nearly all open-ended goals. Excerpt from Magical Ethics. Jabrak slammed her hands down on the table and stood up abruptly, nearly knocking her chair over as her leg struck the backwards. "All right then, I'll go get my brother now. Everyone, just wait here, don't move." The sudden, energetic display from the previously calm Jabrak was so surprising that no one managed to reply before she sprinted out the kitchen and into the hall. Moments later, the sound of the front door slamming was heard. Once outside, the demon sprinted in the direction of her contractor. Once view from the mansion was completely obstructed by the trees, Jabrak revealed two large moth-like maroon wings from her back and flew swiftly between the conifers, low to the ground. Within moments, a target came into sight, swinging between branches in its typical disturbing manner. Directing her course upwards towards the golem, Jabrak opened her arms wide and tackled Mud bodily, gripping him with a strong bear hug. Immediately, the slimy, magical beast distorted to slip from her grasp. "There's a strong monster in the mansion. We must stop it from destroying everything," came the boy's voice, still monotone despite the obvious distress. Jabrak moved her arms wildly in an attempt to keep a hold of the undulating mass. "Wait! I have the situation under control. You'll just make things worse." Perhaps believing in her inability to tell direct lies and trusting her judgment, Mud finally calmed down. After setting the golem on a nearby branch, the demon took a seat in the air itself. "All right, here's the situation. Remember those humans I told you that would hunt you down after they saw that strong spell?" "I do remember." The demon crossed her arms and grinned smugly, although with no joy in her eyes. "They came to hunt you down." "I don't understand. The humans said that they would not seek revenge. I do not think they were telling a lie." Jabrak laid back on her unseen platform. "It's not about revenge. Humans don't like it when strong things they don't control are nearby. When that happens, they either kill it or capture it." "Why not deceive them that I'm a golem controlled by you or Sithla?" The demon sat up straight and placed her hands on her chin, closing her eyes. "I thought of that. Normally that would remove the need for subjugation, even if I would get a lecture about not controlling you properly. But there's one thing I'm worried about. It's common knowledge that a well-made golem will follow any direct order from a human." Snapping her eyes open, she looked directly in Mud's own 3 eyes. "Tell me, how would you respond if a human said to you, 'I order you to tell me anything that you know which I would want to know'?" Without hesitating a moment, Mud replied, "Sithla is dead and I hid his corpse in the basement. Jabrak is a demon with very few restrictions on her movements. Her true name is Jabrak Sakali Comexel Walkley Duplius. I captured 2 young humans and they are currently being tortured in the basement. My goal is to someday take control of this entire planet and make it impossible for anything to ever damage the Masters." Halfway through the ranch, Jibrax had collapsed with a defeated sigh and placed both her hands against her forehead. "Stop! Please, just stop. Oh, divine! That was even worse than I thought it was going to be. And you weren't even done yet, were you?" "No." After a deep breath, Jibrax straightened up and took more serious expression, making it known that your golem would be bad for you, and more importantly, bad for me. They would definitely question you to know why you acted so weird in the forest, and when you answered truthfully, as you must, they would either kill you or wipe your mind for reprogramming. We cannot let that happen. It would be extremely difficult to follow the Master's orders if I forgot them." Jibrax nodded, glad the golem understood the seriousness of the situation. "So, I came up with a way to make them stop looking for the named monster incident. I've convinced them that you're a human." At that, Jibrax untied a large black piece of cloth that she had tied around her waist. Now that it had a better view of the material, Mud recognized it as a torn tablecloth it had found and cleaned in the trash pile the night before. Forming her nails into large claws, Jibrax cut several deep gashes into the bottom half of the fabric, then wrapped the top half around Mud's upper mound. "We can't waste too much more time here, or they'll come looking for me. Here is what we're going to do." End of chapter. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, please consider supporting the author from the link down below. Otherwise, if you wish to support this channel, there are numerous ways to do so, like liking, subscribing, and possibly even becoming a patron. Otherwise, the easiest way would be to share. And until the next video, I hope that you all have a good one, and I'll see you then. Cheers.